The fight of the century is here. You asked for it, we're delivering it. The paragon of principle, Sir Duncan the Tall, versus the monstrously malevolent mountain, Gregor Clegane. Who is the better warrior? Who would win if they fought? Before we begin, like, hype, subscribe, praise the algorithm, yada yada yada. I know, you all want the violence. But firstly, we need to do a big fat spoiler warning. Please read it. But TLDR, we'll do what we can, but unfortunately some spoilers will be unavoidable. Now for the considerations. Books or shows? For the piece of shit, Gregor Clegane,
no bias, promise.
purely the books. He's bigger, stronger, a more capable warrior, and overall, just way more mean. We'll also nab him in his prime, which seems to be just before Oberyn put him down. For Sweet and Perfect Dunk, also books. But the more interesting question is, at what point in time do we pluck him from? The only fair thing we can do is pluck Dunk just after his current final novella, The Mystery Knight. It's definitely not Dunk at his most formidable, but it is Dunk at his current known and fully depicted prime. Let's kick things off where we always do, with Physicality. Oof, these are some specimens, Tom. You don't get monikers like The Tall and The Mountain That Rides unless you possess at least slightly above average stature. Dunk stands at 6'11", as confirmed by ex-brother Maester Bloody Aemon. Yeah, that guy. As such, he's absolutely huge, a giant by most standards. And yet, in this matchup, he's the short ass. Because Gregor clocks in at 8 feet tall. And before you go thinking that extra foot of height doesn't make all that much of a difference, here's the side-by-side. Yikes. Dunk, maybe you want to rethink this? No? Okay. By the time of The Mystery Knight, Dunk is an incredibly well-made 21-year-old lad, just shy of his physical prime, and quite well-rounded. Most visual depictions seem to suggest that while he does have a broad and powerful 275-pound frame, he's also quite lean and athletic in a similar manner to how young Bobby V and Jaime Lannister are described. Despite the size, Dunk is actually very fast and agile, on top of his being tremendously strong and durable, even by the standards of his size, with tenacity, stamina, and endurance being his hallmark traits. Whether it's strength of mind, strength of body, or strength of heart, Dunk just keeps getting back up and fighting past what should be physically possible for a human. Gregor, on the other hand, he's around 35 as of a Storm of Swords, so in his prime, though maybe on the tail end of it, with 400 pounds of dense muscle tacked onto his powerfully built 8 feet tall frame. Before giants and dragons get involved, he's at the top of the food chain in raw strength, has top-tier endurance. This is a guy who has been riddled with arrows and wanted to carry on fighting, with tenacity motivated by an instinctual, animalistic will to survive. And he's surprisingly fast. That doesn't mean he's quick point blank, by the way, like Dunk is shown to be. He's just faster than he looks. Unfortunately for the piece of shit, his physical buffs do come with some pretty detrimental trade-offs. His gigantism causes intense migraines that require a constant dosing of milk of the poppy to make being in the light and around loud noises tolerable. Oberyn shouts not only enrage the mountain, but it's strongly implied they also acted as a form of sensory warfare.
Man, that man's badassery knows no bounds.
Another common sense weakness we can attribute to his size is a deficiency in stamina, and that's before you throw any heavy armor on him. In Gregor's 2 known fights against a singular opponent, he hacks and moves about for a bit, and then in both instances, quickly gets tired and starts to drop his guard. This may not be telling us outright the mountain has a piss-poor gas tank, but it seems to be showing it. And even if this is wrong and his stamina is half decent, with his anger issues piled on top, he really doesn't seem to be the best at managing whatever he actually does have. Plus, guys, it's just common sense. You cannot be that big with that much muscle and have good stamina. It's just impossible. With all that said, who takes this round? Who the fuck do you think? Let's not twist this, Dunk does have some tangible physical advantages. He's faster and, owing to his more lean build, can likely fight for much longer at 100%. Endurance-wise, he's also comparable, if not slightly above Greg, having carried on fighting on his feet with some very grievous wounds. Though I must stress that edge is minor, if it's there at all, Greg does manage to power through some pretty gnarly shit too. But despite Gregor's headaches being a crippling weakness Dunk could capitalize on if he's made aware of them or cottons onto them, Gregor is monstrously big and monstrously strong, with monstrous reach. His physical output is simply inhuman. I can't see Dunk running circles around Gregor like Oberyn did, who even then was aided by the reach of a spear. Make no mistake, Dunk is one of those rare few who, if Gregor hit him, he could give a good hit back. But it doesn't take away from the fact Greg's still hitting significantly harder with every blow. And yeah, if Gregor crashed into Dunk, Dunk again is part of that rare few who could dig his heels in the ground and push back. But with 125 pounds of weight difference between the two, in no universe is Dunk ever winning that scrum. The only contest Dunk could reliably defeat the piece of shit in is a marathon. Everywhere else, Gregor is comfortably clearing the Hedge Knight with the height, or Dunk's advantages are simply not significant enough to matter. The mountain that rides claims this round. Now let's address weapon specialization and training. Officially, we don't know the mountain's Master of Arms, though I'd hazard a guess it was Benedict Broom, owing to Tywin taking a keen interest in the prick's potential to be terrible in battle. But regardless of tutor, Gregor has had a noble's training, which puts his knowledge and formal skill level high above your average scrub. Sir Duncan's Master of Arms was the Hedge Knight Sir Arlen of Pennytree. Though an indisputable virtuoso in the unbeatable Drunken Master form, he did not impart this knowledge to Dunk, knowing full well it was too dangerous for anyone but himself to wield. He instead taught Dunk the more knightly stuff. The quality of this education, however, is dubious.
Sir Arlen did all he could for you, I have no doubt, but you still have much to learn.
For weapon specialization, Gregor favors pairing a sword with a shield, and book depictions seem to imply he is at least above average as a swordsman. I wouldn't go higher though. In the one sword fight he was depicted in, Sandor absolutely schooled him, and the passage even makes note that the Hound, for some utterly fucking inexplicable reason, is not taking advantage of the huge openings Gregor is giving him. As for Sweet Dunk, you might be fooled into thinking he too specializes in sword and shield, but that owes more to his being a Hedge Knight who wears his shield on his back and his sword on his hip, and thus in the situations he often lands himself in, they are the most convenient thing to grab, or sometimes all he's got on him. But Duncan doesn't actually specialize in swordplay, or a weapon at all for that matter. Where Dunk excels and specializes is in his affinity for brawling, removing the finesse from a fight and utilizing everything about him and around him as a weapon to get the job done. Almost every fight Dunk's won involved employing it in some capacity. If he can't beat you as a knight, he'll beat you as a flea-bottom folk. So, who's got the most respectable diploma of violence? Look, in 99.9% of matchups, Dunk's brawling skills would be such a clutch thing to have in his arsenal. When timed right, it's essentially a means of flipping the dynamic of a fight on its head very suddenly and forcing a Poncy Noble to fight in a manner they are very unaccustomed to, making all their fancy footwork and refined techniques count for very little, allowing Dunk to gain the upper hand. But against Gregor, I would go as far as to say it's almost useless, if not outright cancelled out. The size and weight difference is so vast that even if Dunk has the wrestling skill of an Olympic-level athlete, Gregor, in all but a few perfectly timed situations, can almost outright nullify it with his physicality alone. Gregor's sword and shield isn't reinventing the wheel, but it's a highly dependable and versatile combo. And that's before we even address Gregor's specific equipment specifications, which only adds another layer of ouch to the proceedings. Sorry, Dunk, but Gregor absolutely clears it for this round. He's the literal nightmare matchup and hard counter to your specialization, and he's got better training to boot. Fuck you, Gregor! But you take this round. Onwards to versatility and adaptability. Gregor falls into a similar camp as Jaime Lannister and Daemon Targaryen from previous videos. He has this strong preference for a particular loadout and is unlikely to swap it out based on his opponent, but due to his station as a landed knight, it is almost guaranteed he will have had training in most knightly disciplines. I'd also posit that along with being the hard counter, he's a formidable brawler himself since he can basically just cheese it with his size. And as we saw with Oberyn, he is happy to kamikaze on his opponent with his bare hands. But when it comes to situational adaptability, Gregor really leaves something to be desired. He's that one kid at nursery who's trying to get the square peg in the round hole, and when it doesn't work, he starts trying to hammer it in instead of swapping it out. For fuck's sake, Anthony! I told you try the other hole, you little twat! In the two known duels we've got for Gregor, he just keeps swinging for the fences over and over again, hoping for a different result. When it doesn't work, does he back off and reassess? Or try something different? Does he fuck? He just doubles down and expends himself further. This makes him predictable and easily led by the nose, eventually providing his opponents with a very firm blueprint of what can defeat him. If they can live long enough, that is. Finally, things are looking a little up for Sir Duncan here. Unlike Gregor, Dunk isn't as tunnel-visioned with his weapon choices, and seems quite happy to make use of what's at hand. No, Dunk, that's not what shield for. Shield block. Sword hit. Anyway, as previously addressed, the Lunk is decent with a sword, but is outright stated to be even better with axes and maces. You know what that means, Gregor? Anti-armor weapons, boy! Fuck yeah! Things are also looking better for Dunk in situational adaptability. The Hedge Knight has shown he's more than happy to switch things up if what he's currently doing isn't working. We saw this when he fought Aerion, tagging out Sir Duncan the Tall and tagging in Sir Duncan a Flea Bottom. And without giving spoilers, we'll just clarify, this isn't a one-time thing. Dunk consistently shows he's willing to fall back on the unorthodox and get creative when the standard knightly shit isn't working out for him. So, who's getting this one? The guy who has one really effective but predictable MO, but otherwise little more than a last-second desperation attack to fall back on, or the crafty, unpredictable brawler who isn't as set in his ways and has a more utilitarian mindset regarding weaponry, particularly to top-heavy weapons noted for their effectiveness against plate armor. Fuck you, Gregor! Dunk stands taller in this category. Yes! Dunk's on the upswing, Tom. The next category to consider is... I spoke too soon. Experience. Dunk, by the end of the Mystery Night, is no stranger to combat. He's fought and beaten some highly skilled opponents, even tainting his fair and honourable hands with the filthy, disgusting, inferior blood of the Ironborn. And his time as an orphan in Fleabottom exposed him to much of the harsh realities of the real world, and his time with Sir Arlen exposed him to the horrors of war with the conflict of the Vulture King. Though I doubt Dunk did much besides fetching Sir Arlen's shit. It's not nothing, but I'll be honest, I seriously doubt this is the stuff that fills his considerably large entry in the White Book. One thing I will say for Dunk at this point, though, is that he has had a lot of experience punching up above his own weight. Metaphorically, of course, and winning. So, in a way, you can kind of say he is very experienced at being an underdog. And that counts for something, considering that's perhaps some of the most valuable kind of experience to have when you look at his opponent. Speaking of which, Gregor could probably fill several White Books of his own with his combat time. Even though 50% of it is spent pillaging settlements and butchering helpless peasants, that's just the prologue. Because the other 50% of the time, Gregor is epitomizing, I did it on purpose for the memes, you fucks, the concept of getting stuck in. The only guy who might have similar battlefield hours in the thick of it is Robert Baratheon. Gregor took part in the sack of King's Landing as a teenager, joined the demolition job known as the Greyjoy Rebellion, but where he really clocked in some overtime was the War of the Five Kings. Gregor was basically Tywin's MVP, and easily the Old Lion's most active subordinate. He fought in big battles, raids, sieges, and did most of the pursuing actions. Not to mention, during this, he fought his own personal mini-war against the Brotherhood without banners, and kicked the shit out of them on several occasions. Oof, ouch. Dunk, are you sure you don't want to reconsider? No, he wants to fight, Tom. Let's carry on. Dunk has been exposed to war, but Gregor lives and breathes in it. He's a massive piece of shit and a coward in many areas, but fighting isn't one of them. When he's not resting his head in a dark room or committing the most heinous of crimes, you'll find him in the middle of the bloodiest of battles, kicking ass and taking heads. Do we really need to tell you who won this? Next up is fight IQ, cunning, and personality flaws. There's a common perception that both Dunk and Gregor are both a few sandwiches short of a picnic. That may be so when it comes to academic pursuits, but both of these guys are not dum-dums when it comes to fighting. Both show intuitive intelligence in martial applications. To give an example for each, we've got Dunk's figuring out his opponents and switching up his style to better handle them, and Gregor's intelligently positioning himself so the sun was at his back and in Oberyn's eyes. At least until Oberyn showed us why he's fucking Oberyn and used it against Gregor, but still. Sensible and smart thing to do under normal circumstances, and for both a solid demonstration of strong warrior instincts. It's important to note that, yes, Oberyn is schooling Gregor in their duel. But that's not because Gregor is fighting badly. It's because Oberyn is just that fucking boss, on top of having game planned his approach specifically to counter the giant. Same goes for Dunk. This is a guy who managed to beat a fully trained and, by all accounts, very skilled knight, while said knight was wearing armor, and Sir Duncan had nothing but a sword and shield to hand. Neither is a scholar of combat like Belwas, Barristan, Daddy Dane, Jamie, or Big Bobby B, but neither is either deficient in fight IQ, and yes, I know, neither either, hey, that rhyme, Tom. I also think it's poignant to point out that both of these guys are nigh on fucking fearless once they've been engulfed by the flames of battle. As for cunning, Dunk is not really one for cunning, or underhanded tactics in general. He's a bit too honest and honourable for that shit. Gregor, kind of the same. Not the honest and honourable part, it's not fucking April Fool's, just that he much prefers the direct approach most of the time. For personality flaws, Dunk's got a little bit of a temper, but nothing major. Where he's really got to watch it is in his foolishly honourable nature. He truly believes in the ideals of knighthood and chivalry, and along with that comes mercy and a desire to fight as fair as possible, two things you could really do without in a fight with the Mountain. Gregor, on the other hand, has so many personality flaws to list, and I fucking hate him enough to do it. But the only one relevant to combat is his temper! He's sadistic, don't get me wrong, but credit where it's due, he never seems to drag life and death fights out for it. But the guy's anger issues could make the fucking Hulk blush. Seriously, this guy sees red at someone snoring loudly. Anger can be useful in a fight, but excessive anger blinds you into acting stupid and reckless. Wait, is Gregor stupid because he's angry, or angry because he's stupid? The winner of this round? Fight IQs are comparable, cunning irrelevant, it's all on who you think has the bigger personality flaw. Dunk's naive notions of chivalry, or Gregor's explosive and untamable temper? We have seen firsthand how detrimental the Mountain's temper is in combat. Oberyn wound him up easily, Loris absolutely tilted him, and Sandor frustrated him by basically not dying and stonewalling him. In all instances, Gregor went into a blind rage and started getting very careless, leaving himself exposed. If Dunk refuses to die quickly, the Hedge Knight might be given the openings he desperately needs. Though I genuinely fear that if Dunk was to somehow knock Gregor down and the Mountain was to fake a yield, Sweet Dunk would take it at face value and get himself Oberyn. I'm going to give this one to Dunk, for his greater composure, because combined with his strength of heart and the sheer will to carry on fighting far beyond his limits, that will play well against Gregor's unstable temper. But he's only just having it. I still don't trust him not to let his naivety regarding honor get in the way, and it's stopping him doing what it takes to win. But hey, a win's a win, Dunk, and you really bloody need them right now, so take it. Let's round things off with their equipment. Dunk isn't exactly equipped with endgame loot. He has Sir Arlen's old longsword, the steel one, Tom, don't be fucking gross, which seems decently made, a common wooden heater shield, and, well, this axe and mace stuff comes from somewhere, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he's got access to a half-decent battle axe and mace of the quality you could expect for a Hedge Knight. His armor also leaves something to be desired. He's got plate in some very vital areas like his head, neck, hands and lower legs, but the majority of his protection stems from a simple ringmail hauberk, though it is noted to be good quality steel. This provides a dash more freedom of movement than a full plate harness, though well-made plate will often be quite unrestrictive in its own right, and combined with the breathability and lack of multiple layers and padding, it can regulate heat better. Thus, it's overall less taxing on stamina and endurance. But I'm really not sure that's worth the trade-offs. 1. You're far more vulnerable to thrusting weapons. Ringmail does mitigate thrusts, but unlike plate, it can be stabbed through with the right weapons, enough strength and good technique. 2. Because the rings are highly flexible, it does a far worse job of mitigating blunt force trauma. Even sword hits tend to really fucking hurt when you've only ring ringmail on. Overall, Dunk's gear is no more than middle of the road, and even that might be overly generous. Gregor, on the other hand, comes to play with some very high quality toys, made from the best Castle Forge steel Lannister Gold can buy.
Where does he get those wonderful toys?
He owns a thick, heavy oaken shield that covers nearly half his body, paired with a 6-foot greatsword, which he can wield with a single hand. This isn't infeasible either, because relative to Gregor, his sword is merely a slightly longer than normal longsword. But, that's not much comfort to his opponents though, because relative to them, it's still a fucking greatsword, with a greatsword's reach, a greatsword's capacity for strong, devastating, arcing cuts, and is only a couple of feet short in a spear's reach when it comes to capacity to thrust. Which means the Mountain can hit you long before you can so much as touch him. It gets better though! The Mountain enters battle head to toe in full plate armor, twice as thick as standard, with the typical layers of mail and boiled leather gambeson underneath. He's nothing short of a living, breathing tank with "come at me, bro" energy. Theoretically, nothing is going to pierce the plate itself, meaning the only way you can hope to hurt him is to target the gaps with something sharp or bring a heavy enough can opener that can transfer blunt force through the plate. Much like his physicality though, the dickhead's loadout comes with its own issues. Having his armor made twice as thick as standard is actually an incredibly fucking stupid idea. And when combined with a needlessly heavy oaken shield, brings a cost-to-benefit ratio that's firmly in the red. Normal plate can already shrug off anything not designed to defeat it, and thickening up the plate starts to provide diminishing returns, at least when weighed against the cost, on the things that are. All Gregor's really done by doubling the thickness of the armor is doubled the weight he's got to lug around. Plate already fucks with your stamina. Doubling its weight effectively halves the time he can fight at full strength again, for what amounts to a marginal improvement in the ability to dissipate blunt force. Not good when it's already suspected he's got a smaller than normal gas tank. And the real kicker, it gives him no extra protection against sharp, pointy things because the usual gaps and weak spots in the plate are still there for these weapons to take advantage of, because they are outright necessary for movement. And don't get me started on his fucking helmet. Having that thing be twice as heavy as standard puts more strain on the neck. And due to the laws of inertia, if someone smashes Gregor with downward strikes using something heavy, it's actually going to exacerbate the force transferred to the neck and spine and do way more damage. So, with the fucking moron's equipment handicaps taken into account, whose toys are then bringing it home for their owner? It's tricky, because there's actually some swings and roundabouts going on here. Sir Duncan and Gregor's respective armors and weapons feed into that natural stamina disparity between the two, widening the gap between how long both could feasibly fight before exploitable exhaustion set in, further cutting down Gregor's window to finish Dunk off before he gets too tired, drops his sword, falls down, and a much fresher Dunk can stomp the fucker's head in. Curb stomp him, Hedge Knight! It's not dishonorable. Dunk's also rocking a couple of weapons that really fuck with full plate, especially in the hands of someone strong like Dunk is, and especially more so when the dickhead in full plate is extra sensitive to blows to his head. Greatswords, despite the Hollywood depiction, are really poor against plate, due to the dispersing of the weight and force of the blow across the entire blade instead of focusing it on a small area like you get with blunt force weapons. But because Dunk's relying on a ringmail hauberk for most of his body, Gregor's normally suboptimal greatsword is way more effective. He'll still receive nearly all of the blunt force, the result of which can be broken bones and internal hemorrhaging. The Hedge Knight can take some serious hammer, this isn't in question, but one big blow in the wrong place, one failure to get his shield up at the right time, and he's out of the fight. And sure, he's fast and agile, and could avoid some of it, but he's not this level of fast and agile where he could avoid all of it. I think this has to go to Gregor. His needlessly heavy plate and shield is fucking stupid, but out of the gate, he is much more difficult to harm, has much better reach with his weapon, and he can really hurt Dunk with his sword. Ugh, fuck you, Gregor, but you take this round. And after all that, we've reached the conclusion. Look, guys, we know who you want us to say, but he just isn't ready. Myself and Tom, we knew this was going one way from the start. At this point in his life, Sir Duncan is a champion in the making, but he hasn't earned a belt yet.
Your belt's made of rope.
He does have the heart and some of the tools, But he's at an undeniable skill disadvantage here, with nowhere near enough experience to compensate, and is utterly hamstrung by two major factors: armor and his specialization. Dunk can't fall back on his ace card if the fight starts slipping away from him. Gregor is just too big and too strong to reliably brawl with. The slightest error in timing, and that's it. Gregor's got hold of him.
I always say these guys have to be perfect. They have to be perfect. For 12 rounds, I only have to be perfect for 2 seconds, and each and every time I prove that.
And sure, Dunk will resist it far more admirably than most, but even he can't beat out that kind of weight disparity, and Greg will grind Dunk to dust with raw weight bullying alone. And that's not even his most pressing concern. Before he can even contemplate initiating a grapple, he's got to get past that sword, and with his current armor loadout, one meaty swing from that greatsword connecting in the wrong place, and Dunk is done. Is there any way our lovable Hedge Knight could squeak a win? Sure. If Egg throws him an axe or mace and he keeps his shield up when it really fucking counts, he might just land that blow on Gregor's head that puts his lights out.
Stop raping, sir.
But, even though the luck is his alone, no bloody way can Lady Luck's shoulders support the weight of Dunk pulling that off more times than Gregor does something to take him out of the fight first. I'm sorry, but she can only ask so much of the poor girl. If the Hedge Knight steps into that arena with the mountain at this point in his life, more times than not, he won't leave that arena alive. Sorry, Dunk. He's knocked you down, and by some utter fucking miracle can't be bothered to finish you off. So stay down. Sir Gregor Clegane, you are there. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just can't let this video end with that piece of shit taking a definitive all-time win. Dunk's story is one of hope and optimism. This isn't over, Gregor, you piece of crap! Dunk, viewers, patience. When the books or show get there, whichever comes first, so I guess when the show gets there, or we just get more material building out his time with the Sacred Order, we'll give Sir Duncan the Tall his white cloak and evolve him into Lord Commander Duncan of the Kingsguard, with that sexy white plate armor to shrug off those sword blows, and the skills and training and experience to best the greatest warriors of his time. How does he fare against Big Greg then?